Thank you everybody for joining us today. Today we're going to be talking about the recruiting, and specifically we're going to be talking about candidates and candidate management within the system. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, on my browser I should say. And you should be able to see self-service and what we're going to see here. Now, obviously the candidate management is mostly done under the recruiting side. Of course, the manager is able to see candidates for positions where they are the hiring manager. And new in the latest release, which is available today, we'll have a webinar later this week, is enhancements to internal candidates. So let's say Ted would like to apply for a position. We have a number of enhancements about that. Well, I will talk today about internal candidates, but stay tuned to and attend the webinars later this week to get some more information on internal mobility and things like that. So let's look at candidates. So like I mentioned, it's going to be over here in the recruiting side of the house. So I've already got this loaded up here. Obviously, you could just go to your menu, choose recruiting, and then choose candidates to see a list of the candidates that you have in your system. I don't have too many, only 29 candidates, but obviously you may have more candidates here. One thing that I just mentioned is you do now see a new column here with the type of candidate. So external would be somebody who is not a member of you're not an employee, not a member of your company, something like that. They're not a former employee. So they're somebody who's outside, they're external. And then internal would be somebody who either they were previously an employee or they're currently an employee. They've applied for a position. And we're now tied to that employee record so that when you rehire them and so forth, their job history gets updated and all those things. So that is this new column here, but you'll see the other column showing things, obviously their name, number of jobs they've applied for, when they last applied for a position, of course, the current status, and the home phone number. And of course, if you want to turn columns on or off, you could like, I want to see mobile phone as an example, turn that on, maybe turn off home phone, whatever. You could turn those types of things off. From here, of course, you'll see the other searches. I've already opened up the advanced box, but you'll see the 4 searches we have right here. Pretty simple, searching for the name. So if you're looking for Charles as an example, simple search like that. Keywords. Now what this will do is it will search into their profiles for keywords and skills that they have. So I don't know if I have anybody with Excel, but let's say I was looking for somebody with Excel. I've got 4 people with Excel skills. So I can look at them. Perhaps I'm looking for somebody that fits a position, something like that. I could say, okay, Brian, he's got Excel skills. Let me go ahead and look at him and, maybe link him to a position where I needed some Excel skills. Of course, I could look for other skills as well. And then you'll see last applied and status there. And then under the advanced, you'll see even more information. This is new. The type allows you to choose all, which external and internal, but you can just see external and internal, or I should say external or internal. So you'll notice I had 1 internal, they're now gone. And then, now I'll be able to see them. So pretty simple as far as that is concerned. All the other ones were here before. You may have used them searching for phone numbers, job titles, companies, and locations that people may have applied to. So you can search for those right there. Now on this screen here, you can add candidates manually. Now, most of the time people are probably going to be applying to the position through the site, the job site, and they're going to be filling in their own information. But maybe you're more paper-based and people are handing in applications and you're going to be adding them in manually. So we have this ability right here to add a candidate. So you'll see here, when I add a candidate here, very straightforward, the different fields that I can put on this candidate. And this is the one screen. You'll notice I don't have multiple screens or anything like that. And I have 3 required fields. Those are the required fields that are in the system. You could make other fields required. I don't have my localization for other countries. Mine is for the US, so it says social security number, but obviously you could localize that to other countries, or maybe you do SSN/SIN/whatever. So you can do that. And of course, any of the other fields here too, if you want to localize those. So pretty straightforward. I want to put somebody in here. Let's just say Ethan Johnson. Okay. And of course, if I fill in the other fields, it's not going to hurt anything if I have their middle name or their gender or something like that, maybe that's part of the application where you've got that information. And of course I could choose, oh yes, they're a protected veteran or something like that. So simple enough. If I leave it blank, of course, that's not a problem either. Their contact information. So today, email address is a required field. We're looking at adding mobile phone as like one or the other. So that way, if people don't have an email address or maybe they prefer mobile, we're going to add that. What I would recommend is to get that a little bit higher up in our priority is to go over here and suggest that as a new idea. There may already be one out there. I think there might be one. So search for that, and then if not, then create a new one, because I think that'd be a great idea to have one or the other required. But today, the latest version 23.2, email is required. So what is his name? Ethan Johnson at CriterionHCM.com. Oops. Of course, it does need to be a valid email address. So as an example, if I didn't do the .com or something like that, if I just did Criterion, it doesn't work, or it doesn't have the @ sign. So we don't check that this is a legit email address. It just needs to be in the right email address format. You'll see the other fields here. So you can fill this stuff in if you like, and go ahead and hit save. So pretty straightforward, adding external candidate. And then where is he going to be at? Probably page 2. I had it sorted by last name. Where is he? Johnson. It's going to be right there. There's my new guy right here, Ethan Johnson. And I could see him. And of course, now I could click into him to see more information on this particular person. I could do things like add his resume. Maybe I've scanned it in. Maybe he emailed it to me or something like that. When I add that in, I could either click add resume here, go out and browse to where it is and add that in. Let's see. I think I've got one somewhere. Maybe not be for Ethan, but here we go. So add a resume. This one happens to be Word, but if you had PDF, you could do that too. Obviously not that person, but that doesn't matter for this situation. There's their resume right here. You'll notice now that I can do this here. I can do things like download it, use accessibility mode, print it, things like that. These are settings because I have the Word plugin in my browser here. Now, you may not have this built into your browser and it might not show. That is a browser specific thing. It's nothing that we can control. So if you're using a browser that does not have a Word plugin, then that won't work. Same thing with a PDF. Most browsers today have those, but sometimes they don't, and you won't see that. In which case, you could just download it if you don't have that plugin. Or of course, you could go get those extensions, plugins to use those things there. Of course, if maybe he sends me a new one, want to remove it, trash it right there. And this parsing will allow the system to scan the resume and pull out information that I don't already have. So as an example, the phone number, the phone number is right here. He doesn't have that already. It would pull that out there. And other things as far as the experience and so forth, it will pull skills and so forth and fill in their profile. So I could do that right there if I'd like. You'll see here now, application questions. I'm not going to have anything because he has not applied to a position. I just added him as a candidate. He did not apply, and so therefore he hasn't answered any questions on an application. A cover letter, he didn't apply, so he didn't send over a cover letter. So I can't see that right there. Of course, I could attach one. His profile. So again, he did not apply. I did not parse his resume. So I have nothing in here. However, I could add this stuff in manually. Maybe I know what school he went to and I wanted to put that here, or I know his skills. So let's just say he's got PowerPoint skills or something like that. So I can add that in as a skill. Same thing with awards, certifications, etc. I could put those in here and do that kind of stuff if I need to. Demographics. Now, of course, I did fill in his name and his email addresses, and I did say his veteran status, but perhaps you get some additional information from the person and you need to fill that in. This little pencil right up here will allow you to do that. And again, if I had been using somebody who applied, I could still do these same edits. So if they applied, whether they're internal or external, I can edit this. There's one caveat. Internal employees, you'll see that here in a second. I cannot do anything on the demographics because they are an employee and we're going to read their demographics from their employee record. The other stuff, though, I could edit. If they send me a resume and they're an internal employee, I could add that. Of course, cover letter, et cetera, all the other things I can do there. The discussion, again, just like the other things with application questions, he hasn't applied to a job. He's not attached to a job. So the discussion, which is his history for the job he's applying for, is not populated. I can't even click on it right now. Attachments, If I want to attach documents, things like that, I could do that right here. So just go out there and find whatever it is. I don't know why I said a W4, but let's just say that it's W4 and I wanted to put that here. I could attach that file to his record there. And of course, then I could download it and so forth. Now, with any type of attachments, including cover letters and resumes, if I hire this person, they're all going to go into his documents as an employee. So I would be able to see those documents here. Here you'll see download and I could delete. So that's all available right there. Forms. Again, I added this person and they did not fill an application. No forms yet. I can send him a form though. So once he's attached to a position, I can send him forms to fill out. And I'll go over that when I attach him to a position here. Other applications, he has not applied to any specific position, so he doesn't have a second one here. That's right there. And then email and SMS. Again, I don't have anything yet for him, so there's nothing there. All right, so that's an external candidate. Internal candidate is very similar as far as the look and feel of it, but when you're adding an internal candidate here, you're now searching amongst your employees. Now, this does not necessarily mean just your active employees. It could be terminated employees as well. So you'll see here, you could search by different fields, and I could choose somebody, let's say Natalia here, and she's added now as an internal candidate. You'll see there she is right there. The only difference is the demographics I cannot edit. So you'll see that little pencil is gone because this is her demographics from her HR record. So that's why I can't edit it there, because it wouldn't make sense to change it here where I would change it in HR. They're linked to an employee record. All right, but all the other screens are the same there. Now, how do I go ahead and take these candidates and attach them to a position? So if they did not apply to a position, I would need to go to find the position I would like to attach them to. And here are my positions. Of course, you may have more, you may have less, you may have different statuses. I got a couple that are closed and stuff like that. So you may want to do your search over here to find the right one to attach it to. But let's say that person I just did as the Ethan, I want to attach him to pitch maintenance, this job title out here. So I'll go to my candidates and I will go out and find that person. Now I happen to know his name is Ethan, so I can search for that. Of course, you'll see these other fields I can search for, and now he's attached to this position. So when I go back to candidates, it would then say he was attached to pitch maintenance. And of course, in the position, I can now click on his candidate record and see everything here. Now you'll notice a couple of things are active because he's attached to a position, the discussion. So he's showing us a new applicant to this position, and now I can do everything in the discussion that I could do to anybody who had applied directly. And the email and SMS. So this is the reason why this is attached to the position and the candidate. That's why I can't do it just from the candidate record. I have to be in a position. But now I can do that stuff, like maybe I want to send them an email or something like that. You'll also notice, you may have seen previously, I just had the send email button on the candidate, but now I can do other things. So for an example, I might want to send him a form to fill out. So once I have him in here as a candidate attached to a position, I now have more options. So of course, hiring, but let's say I want to send this person a form. Now, anytime I'm doing forms, what this would be for is if you've got, perhaps there's an acknowledgement or an agreement or something you want them to sign. Maybe you're going to do a background check and you need them to sign some type of form for that. So I could come here and I could send them a form. Now the form has to exist in the system. All right, we can't send a form that has not already been set up, but here you can see some forms that I've got out here. Now, I don't know exactly what's on all these forms here, so I'm just going to pick one, and I'll choose this one right here and send that to the candidate. So what will happen is it will send him an email. Now, I don't see that here in my history yet because I need to refresh. Easiest way to refresh, rather than just hitting refresh on your browser, is just to click on something else and then click back on email/SMS. So if you're already on this screen and you send a form, you won't see it until you refresh this little screen here. But now here's what he would have received. Now these are notifications that could be customized if you wanted to change them. So the text here, this is the default text. I have not changed it. But if you would like to change this, then you can do that in your notifications and put different text here. But here's what it would look like by default. There's a link to the form that I sent them. And of course, in their email system, whatever they're using, they could click on that and it will take them to that form. So whatever this is, describe an experience. I don't know. All right, I like turtles. All right, so just something real quick there, send, and they would submit that form. Now, when I go back to forms here, I'm going to see that it was filled out. Of course, if I had not filled it out, it would say that it was sent, but then not filled. And you could send as many forms as you would like to them individually. So I could go up here, send another form and something else, whatever this full apply is. All right, so I can send that to them. And as I do that, again, if I come over to forms, you'll see that the status is nothing because it has not been filled out. All right. And then he would have an email for that other form that I asked him to send to fill out whatever this full apply is. So you can see what a form looks like. Now, when we're talking about forms here, and I know we've talked about forms in other training, you can have forms that update the candidate record. So as an example here, I'm going to fill out a couple of fields here, and it's going to update the candidate's record. So I believe, I'm crossing my fingers, I didn't check this form beforehand, but things like the middle name, the date of birth, their national identifier, social security number, SIN, et cetera, that can do that. Their gender, things like that can update the candidate's record if they're linked. I'm hoping this one is. So I'm just going to put in Harold as his middle name, and I will choose just go back a few years. Let's just say he's May 5th of 1999 there, and what's his gender? So I'm going to fill in some of these. Now, I don't know if any of these are required, so I'm going to hit send. Now, you'll see here some other things I could do, like skills. So I could say, oh, he's really good at MS SQL, right? And he has certification in first aid. All right, so I'll do a few of these things here, and if they're not required, I can submit this. Now, if they were required, of course, it would, make me fill those in. That's a form setting. So what does that mean? Hopefully they're linked over, and I should see things in here now. Let me just refresh to see if the name did update with whatever that person's. What did I do? There you go, Harold Johnson. There's that birthday I put in. And if I go to the profile, there you go, MS SQL. So you can see those things that came over from the form are right here. That's a form thing. It's not necessarily covered in this training. We've done training, I believe, on forms. We have videos on forms. And of course, you can reach out to support if you need help on forms, or your partner to how do you do that exactly. But those are called target fields. So they can update the profile there. All right, other things you can do here now, if he was in multiple positions, I would see that here. I've only linked him to pitch maintenance. If I did link him to something else, let's say a vendor, and I added him over here, I could switch, I could switch between the positions, and I could see that he's applied to multiple positions. So in the position that I'm hiring, for example, vendor, not sure why it says pitch maintenance, I can click on the person and I can see the other positions that he has applied for. So I'm able to see that right there. If I'm in the candidate, and last name, where's he at? Johnson, I can switch between the different positions right here. So if I'm looking at the candidate record, I can switch back and forth. If I'm in the job, I can just see that he's applied to that. But here I can say, okay, in pitch maintenance, what's happening there? His discussion is going to be different than whatever's happening in merchandise sales. So you can see how that's showing different there. Now, other things here you'll see, I can tell which position I'm in here as I go back and forth there. It's telling me those things there. The status here will allow me to have different statuses for the candidate. So perhaps as I'm going through, I could say, oh, I've contacted this person. Now, this is letting me know under pitch maintenance, his status went from new applicant to candidate, or to contacted. When I go to the other one, it's not going to show that because I haven't changed the status for that position. So this is the status for each position where they've applied for. All right. You'll see these. Now, these are things that can be configured in your settings. So I'll open that and show you this. It's a user code table where you can do that there. Let me just bring that up real quick. So user code tables, and they are called, it's called a candidate status. And here you go. So whatever order you put them in here, you can show them in the order right there. So that's why I show contacted, hired, interviewer, interview, hiring manager stage, because look, that's the order they are right here. All right, now you'll see here, you've got some options. I do want to cover this because it's important. The hiring manager view. So what this means is that you might have some type of process in place that says, okay, the recruiter is going to review the candidates and change their status to something before the hiring manager sees them. So maybe you don't want the hiring manager just to see everybody. They should only see the people that have at least gone through some checking or vetting by the recruiter. So you can have a hiring manager status. If it's 1, that means the hiring manager can see them. If it's 0, they cannot. So new applicant, as an example, and mine is 0. So if I was a hiring manager for that pitch maintenance, I would not have been able to see that person until they've been contacted, because contact is one of it, or hired, interview, hiring, these ones here. If I changed it from contacted to, let's say, rejected, it's going to hide them again. So it doesn't make them inactive or anything like that. It just means the hiring manager can't see them. All right, and then you'll notice right here, we do have one for the status of hired. So when they're 1, that means they are hired. All right, so there you can see that. Now I did mention that you can hide them from the hiring manager. You can also say that they are no longer active if they are one of these statuses. So they kind of play off of each other. You might say that they are still active if I'm not sure why offered is said this way, but if they're offered, but the hiring manager doesn't see them anymore. Probably doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe something else. Maybe when they're first contacted, they're active, but the hiring manager doesn't see them until they're ready to be interviewed or reached out to by the hiring manager. Maybe you got a status of that. So you may have active 1, hiring manager 0. Others where, they went through the interview process, they were not a good fit. You change their status to rejected or something like that. So you would put down 0 maybe for hiring manager view and 0 for active. So you can kind of see how those all played together there. All right, adding a new one, very simple. You'll see here code description, and then those 3 options, active, hired, and hiring manager view. So 1, 0, 1 or something like that for those in there. If you come into your list and you say, well, I don't need this one called, let's say as an example, interview hiring manager stage, you don't need it anymore, you can make it inactive. Just uncheck that box. All right, so those are the statuses there. Other things, now these first 2, ordering a background report, we work with verified credentials for this. We have an app already for that. But if you have a service that we could connect to, we'd like to work with you to get that done. And then we can add that as an option in there for the background report. So that is specifically today for verified credentials. I don't have the app installed, but there's an app in here for verified credentials. So that would use verified credentials for that. You have to have an account with them and so forth to do that. And this would allow you to order a background check by verified credentials. And then once it comes back, you could view that in here. If you don't use verified credentials, or you're using some other system and we're not integrated, these 2 aren't going to do anything for you. All right, we already talked about sending forms. I could view the forms that they've submitted. If I want to view that, I can do that. I can see that form out there. And then pre-boarding. So perhaps you've gone through and you've found the right person and stuff like that. I didn't talk about interviewing. Interviewing. If you would like to schedule an interview for somebody, which you're going to do probably before pre-boarding, you can do that right here. So here you can add an interview type here. All right, these 3 options, in-person, phone, and video. There's the date and time for it. So I'm just going to choose a video one. I will put it for tomorrow at 2 p.m. All right, the address, if I'm using video, probably put like a Zoom address or something right here. All right, now something that's new, again, we'll talk about it in our release thing here, is the review template. So by default, when you set up a position, a job, you can choose the review template that you would like to use. However, you can use other templates as well. So maybe there's 2 or 3 interview stages, and you want to have a different template for each stage. As they go through the interview process, you may have interview templates for these. So you could have different interview templates for each stage now. So you simply choose that here. If I did have a default, it would already be in here and I could change it. I don't have a default on pitch maintenance. That's why it was not in there. This is not a required field. If you don't want to use interview templates, you don't have to. All right, duration. So maybe it's going to be 30 minutes there. And then the interviewers. So the interviewers doesn't have to be the hiring manager. It could really be anybody. It might be the hiring manager, but it might be some other people. Maybe it's going to be like a colleague or something like that that would work with the person. So you could do that. So let's just say Josephina and Desiree are going to be doing the interview. Now, what this means is they will be able to see this candidate in their self-service, and they'll be able to do this template. So at the end of the interview, you may have them go in, or even during the interview, and have this up on screen, and they go through and they can answer the template for that. All right. As well as you'll be able to, I don't have any interview notes here, but once the interview is done, I will be able to see these templates down here at the bottom. So once it's completed, I'll be able to see that. I can have a message here that goes out to the interviewers and the candidates, and then I'll go ahead and save this right here. So this is going to, of course, go into the discussion. And those two interviewers are going to get a notification. And I can send an email out to the candidate. So I did not check that box, but if I did, it would have sent an email out to the candidate. So you do need to check that box on the interview to let them know that you're going to send them the thing right here. You can download the calendar ICS, I believe it is, if you want to add that to your calendar. And I think that'll send them an email now. There it is. So here's the email. Again, this is a notification. You could change this message if you like. All right, so let's say we've done the interview and this is the right person. You've done your offer letters, you're ready to hire them. So you might do some pre-boarding. So let's say I'm going to do this here. I'm going to say, well, I'll probably change this to hiring manager status, but I'll go through this real quick and say I'm going to hire this person. Let's see. Oh, here's hired. All right, so let's change their status to hired, but I'm going to send them some pre-boarding things. So this is a specific type of onboarding list, but it's just for candidates. So you may have them fill out various forms and read documents and so forth as part of pre-boarding. Here's an example of this. This is something we added a couple of years ago. So you can have them go through a pre-boarding checklist right here. Like I want them to watch a video, I want them to read this policy, and I want them to fill out this form. So they can come in through that link and do this at any time, and you're going to keep track of this stuff. All right, so that is in a very quick nutshell how the pre-boarding works there. They can do this, they can revisit this. So if they're not ready to do some forms or something like that, maybe you've got 10 different things and they just don't have much time to do it right now, they could do a couple of them, then come back later and do them again, do whatever else is remaining out there. So they can always revisit that link. That is an individual link for that particular person. So it's not like they have to have a login or anything like that. It's just a link that they can click on anytime to open that. And the nice thing about that is that you keep track of this stuff, the system does, I should say. So when you hire the person, those things are going to be marked as completed. Anything they didn't complete is going to be in their onboarding list. So it's really nice. All right, so the last step is going to be to hire a candidate. Now, this is where it's a little different for internal versus external, because an internal, they're already an employee. So an external one is pretty straightforward. He's doing a new hire for somebody. He's just going to take all their information, going to fill in stuff like their name, their address, and so forth from whatever we collected from them. So you can see this right here. Everything I collected on this person, I can just go forward. Let me just quickly put a name in here, or an address, I'm sorry. Any town. All right, and then the last step here, employment information. So I'll just quickly put a hire date in here and say they're a new hire. All right, everything else, I'm just gonna skip anything and hopefully it's all filled in. And there we go. So here's that new hire onboarding list. Here's the pre-boarding stuff. So it's here, and then I can add other onboarding stuff in here. So let's say onboarding push, whatever that is. It's gonna add some things. and now that person is going to be an employee. Now, here's the difference. When I go and hire an external or an internal one, it's going to be a little different because they are already in the system. So I'm going to go ahead and attach somebody real quick to vendor who is a internal candidate. Natalia. So she's an internal candidate. And you'll notice in here, I'm going to have hiring candidate here. This is going to be a little different because she's already in the company. So here you can see I've got some options. Do I want to transfer with a termination of her current position, or do I want to add her to a new employer? So in my situation here, she was not in this company already. She was in another company because I got two. So I have the option of what do I want to do with her existing record? I want to transfer her and terminate, or do I want to just add her to the new one? I'm going to just say add. Now I'm going to skip over stuff that I don't need because you know what? She's already got all this stuff. So I can skip all this. Her address is already filled in. I can skip this. Of course, this is just like the steps there, but that's how it's a little different in that it gives you some options there on what do you do with them in there. If I was hiring her to the company where she's already at, it would change the record. So let's say she was an admin, whatever, and I hired her to this pitch maintenance, it would say, okay, whatever the hire date is, the day before that is the end of that admin position, and then the new date is then there. So her job history would reflect that change as far as in the history of that. So when I go to her employment and I go to her position history, I would have seen if this was the existing company, it would have like an end date of 7:30 and a start date of 7:31 with a new position. Oh, sorry, merchandise seller. So it would update the history there. If she had been terminated and now I'm rehiring her, of course, it's going to rehire her, and it would have that gap of time between when she was terminated and then when she was rehired. So we do have that logic built into what do you do with somebody who is an employee already? If they need to be rehired, if they're getting like a promotion type thing, or if they're transferring between companies. So that is all in there. So that's it real quick, just a couple minutes over. I apologize. Let me just go back to the slideshow real quick. I did want to mention our webinars one more time. We have a partner webinar. If you are a partner on Wednesday, you should have got an invite for that already, hopefully. And then we do have our client webinar. We're going to talk about some of this as quickly as I can on Friday. So please sign up for those if you're interested. Regarding our learning series in 2 weeks, if you're in the US and you're doing recruiting, you might be interested in E-Verify and how to set up the system for E-Verify. So we're going to talk about that in a couple of weeks here. If you're not in the US or you're not interested in E-Verify, in 4 weeks here, you'll see we're going to switch back over to HR, or I should say self-service. We're going to do a little train a trainer on things like how do you teach people to use self-service. And then in a month or so, we're going to talk about notifications. So I talked about notification layouts and customizing with candidates. We're going to go in more detail in September. So those are our next 3 classes. Thank you for being here today. I know I went a little bit over. I do apologize for that. One quick last reminder, if you do have questions on this or other questions, doesn't need to be about candidates, you'll see our phone number, our email address right there to reach out to support. You can also access that from the help menu in the system. You'll see the phone number and email there, and you can also do a ticket directly in the help menu. So thank you for joining us today. I do appreciate that. Hopefully I'll see you later this week for our release webinars. If I don't, or otherwise, have a great day.